This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network. Parental discretion is advised.
Hey, sports fans, it's world champion handicapper Mike North. Punch this number in your phone right now. If you're driving, pull over. 1-800-808-3419, 1-800-808-3419 for a free pick and info for the premier handicapping site in the country, VegasScoresAndOdds.com. It's the only site you'll ever need with expert handicappers like John Anthony, Denny Macklin, Tony Sacco, Ray Monahan, yours truly, and many more. Check out the homepage of VegasScoresAndOdds.com for a tote board with your buddy. Follow Vegas Scores and Odds on Twitter and dial up 1-800-808-3419. It's 1-800-808-3419, 1-800-808-3419, or go to VegasScoresAndOdds.com.
The following program is distributed by the Bears Barroom Radio Network. It's presented live over MixLR.com and later disseminated in podcast format on most delivery platforms. It's intended for all audiences. Never before in the history of sports podcast has one show made this promise. Draft on Tap will report on every college prospect pro scouts are looking at for the 2020 NFL Draft. Every one of them.
Sanders, smothered. Chase Young, another big play.
Montez second and goal. Steps in. Caught. Touchdown. The third passing touchdown of the first half for Steven Montez. There's Johnson. He's got it. Touchdown, Texas. An open man at the 25. A foot race for the tight end. There's that man again. Albert O with his second score. 47 yards.
Draft on Tap with Bears Barroom draft analyst Danny Shimon. Your host, Ryan Badgley. And featuring some of the most respected draft analysts in the country. Grab a beer. We're about to make history.
And making history is what we do on Bears Barroom Radio Network. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Ryan Badgley, and welcome to Draft on Tap. And we're talking tight ends tonight. But before we get into that, let's welcome in our Bears Barroom draft analyst, none other than Danny Shimon. Danny, how are you tonight?
Ryan, Badge, my friend. It's been way too long, man. I missed you. I haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks here.
Yeah, we took a little holiday break and kind of recharged the batteries, and in that time frame, Danny, we've seen the regular season come to an end in college football. So a lot of these players will be suiting up here for the last time, playing in their bowl games, and there's some players who maybe already have. Right. I know I got to witness the last time for a few of the Syracuse Orangemen in person with a hell of a way to close out their season with a walk-off winner over Wake Forest. And the way they did it in overtime and a force fumble that was returned for a touchdown. What a great way for those seniors to go out, as the Orange did not qualify for a bowl game.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that scouting report on the Wake Forest quarterback. I'm still looking at my desk here. I still don't have it on my desk. I remember I told you I needed it the next day. So
well, I'll tell you, my scouting report on Jamie Newman was very small due to the fact that he didn't make it out of the second quarter. So
I didn't catch that game. So what happened?
Yeah, so he, first series he looked very good. Some nice crisp passes, good ball placement. That next series he threw an awful interception. Then the series after that he fumbled, and then early in the second quarter, Alton Robinson, another one of our prospects that we've talked about, ended up pushing the left tackle into Newman. Both the left tackle and Newman went down, and neither one of them came back into the game, so it was his backup that ended up finishing the game and actually played very well in his place.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've been like I mentioned, the end of the season is already, for some of these teams, has already come. The bowl, some are getting ready for bowl games and all that stuff. But some of these kids now are contemplating what they're going to do, in terms of their future. Are they going to come back for their, some cases, senior season, some cases redshirt senior season. So talk around Jamie Newman, from what I've been gathering, is that he's contemplating coming out for the draft, but he's really going to listen to what and he's going to apply for the NFL Draft Advisory Board and see what they come back with in terms of a grade for him. But I mean, chances are, from some people I've talked to, is he's probably leaning towards coming back, unless he gets something like, low first round, high second round grade, which I don't think he'll get. Again,
right.
It takes one team one person to think that, and then he could just easily jump ship. But I mean, he's a kid that definitely has made some progress this season. Has definitely caught some scouts' attentions and some NFL teams' attention. So I'd like to see him come back for another season if he can. I don't think he's going to get a high grade. But if you come back and continue to work on his game and continue to take it to the next level, he's got some intriguing skills. We've talked about him over the last couple of weeks, and so definitely a guy I'd like to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, the season wrapped up. We got some players now that are already declaring for the draft. They're already telling that they're not gonna participate in their respective teams' bowl games. So this is now, for me at least, this is really going to ramp up the draft process here. We're going to see guys coming out declaring. We're going to see some of these guys miss their bowl games, and some guys are going to actually play in their bowl games. And then that's another opportunity for us to scout some more tape, to get on these prospects and kind of break down their games even more. So definitely now is the time where the whole draft process ramps up, and then we're going to start talking about the All-Star games, and eventually, as you and I in the show will be down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. Yeah. Excited and pumped about that, to bring you some live interviews, live coverage of the practices and all that stuff, and report back and let you know who's doing well, who's not doing well. So yeah, I mean, the times are fun. It's exciting. For a scout, for a draft guy, these are the times where the juices start flowing. You start watching more and more tape. Start making some more top 10 lists, and it's just an exciting time, especially for someone like me.
Yeah, no question about it, Danny. I'm looking forward to being down there in Mobile with you and Aldo and anybody listening into this show. You guys can come down too. The more people, the better. It's we're talking with Danny and Aldo. It's a great time. Lots of great football people down there, and we're just completely excited. Myself personally, I can't wait to get down there with you guys, Danny. And before we get into that top 10 tight end list tonight, I have a question for you in regards to players skipping out on their bowl games. Now, I understand why a lot of them do it, and I apologize if I sound raspy. I've been sick for 3 weeks, and it does not seem to go away. But your thoughts on some of these players, Danny, that could have, this could be the potential for them, not necessarily make or break their career, but if they go out and put up a last huge game, does it help them or does it hurt them to not play in their bowl game?
Well, the way I see it, and if I was advising these kids, and if you have, and again, it's hard to get a concrete answer from NFL scouts or from anybody in the NFL, but if you're going in the first round, if you're Joe Burrow, if you're Joe Burrow is a bad example because he's playing for the national championship, or potentially for the national championship. Or if you're some of the other quarterbacks, like say Justin Herbert or some other guys that have a chance to go in the first round, if you're locked in there, you got first round money coming towards you. It'd be very hard for me to tell these kids to go ahead and put that on the line basically, and play. I understand that. I understand the conflict, the back and forth here with, well, there's your team, you have a commitment to the team, and you're giving up on your team. But you know what? At this point now, your season's over, your regular season's over. This bowl game really doesn't mean anything yet. It counts for a victory in terms of your total wins or losses for the season for your team. However, now it's a point where if you're going in the first round, you got to think about your future. You got to be a little bit selfish here and think about what you are going to do to set up your family, and so on and so forth going forward. So if you have a first round grade and you're pretty confident you go in the first round, I would sit out the bowl game because there's no point in risking injury. You look at Jalen Smith, the linebacker from Notre Dame, who was top 10 pick, ended up going in the top of the second round. Now he's recouped some of that money with a nice contract extension. But I think I was reading an article. I think like overall, if you kind of figure on where he was going to go, like in the top 10 area, I think he's already lost someone in the neighborhood of about $20 million that he's never going to be able to recoup again. So again, and football is a sport. It's a contact sport. One play could end the season, could end the career, unfortunately. I mean, look at Tua. I mean, it was a regular season game. Now he went from a guy who was pretty much guaranteed going in the top of 10 in the first round to now possibly going in the bottom of the first round, possibly going top of the second round, depending on his medical reports and how that hip injury recovers and what the NFL team doctors get back from on his test results and all that stuff, how he's recovering and all that stuff. So, it's hard for me to tell a kid that if you're going to go in the first round to play this game. Now, if you're on the fringe of the first round, or if you're a high second round pick, if you're a third, a day 3 guy, but you have aspirations probably going into second day or third day, then I could say go out there and let's ball out. And that way, go out and go out on top, and maybe, that will then open up some more eyes. And hey, it's only positive tape, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of these guys, these scouts and everything, really, they don't take one game and just, make or break someone's stock. They'll put it with the compilation of, whatever you've done throughout your career, whether it's a 2-year career, 3-year career, whatnot, 4-year career. It'll go into that whole, file box, if you will, of your assessment. So, one game will not make or break. But if you're on the fringe of being, a second round to a first round, you think if you play and you ball out and you can be a first round pick, go ahead and do it. But if you're going in the first round, or you have a very good indication you're going in the first round, I would never tell a kid to risk his career and go out and play in a bowl game.
And that's got to be hard for these guys that are going to play in this college football playoff on one of those 4 teams. Getting that opportunity, the national stage.
So to me, that's not. To me, that's easy because here if you're one of these Final Four teams, you have a chance to help your team, accomplish a goal, and that's to win a national championship. And that, to me, that's a no-brainer. I think you have to play. That's why you rarely see guys on one of these top 4 teams not play. So, the guys like that, I think they're playing for sure. It's the other bowl games, the other ones that might not mean that much. Again, to school, it means a lot to the school because of all the, to the fans and so on and so forth. However, to me personally, if it doesn't mean that much to me, I'm thinking about my future and thinking about my career, and I got take care of my body and like basically like Nick Bosa last year. Nick Bosa hurt himself in the opening or second week of the season, and he could have come back towards the tail end of the season. I believe it was. I think it was like either the second or last game of the season, or for sure for the bowl game. But he said, I'm gonna bet on my future and my career, and it worked out for him. He was a number 2 overall pick, and he's out there having a terrific rookie season in the NFL.
Balling right now.
Yeah. Exactly. So, like things like that, you got to think about, you got to consider. Like everyone's always going to point to the Jalen Smith injury, but there's other, Jake Butt from Michigan. Remember him? He was one of the top tight ends coming out in that class, and he tore his ACL in a bowl game. And the kid has never been the same. I think he went in the 4th round by the Broncos, and he's never been the same. He's been battling injuries consistently, and you just don't know if he hadn't played in that game. If he, could he have been a first round pick? Could he have been a second round pick? Could he have some guaranteed money now? Even if he got the injuries in the NFL, could he have that guaranteed money that he can fall back on? Now he's struggling to probably, keep a roster spot. The Broncos went ahead and drafted a tight end in the 1st round last year, Noah Fant. So, it's so hard. You can always point to some of these guys and say, hey, look, you got to go do it for your team, go do it for your school, so on and so forth. But again, if you go out there and football is that type of sport, where if you one hit, one play could end it for you, it's just so hard, and you lose so much, money in terms of going future, for your future. It's so hard to tell these kids to go ahead and sacrifice that much.
Yeah, well, Danny, and to jump right into it, we're talking tight ends tonight here on Draft on Tap, and before we get into the players that are in your top 10 list, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of what you're looking for in a tight end?
Well, as we know, the tight end position has really come to prominence in the NFL nowadays. It's a position where before it was known mainly for a guy who could block and be an extra blocker at the end of the line of scrimmage and help the run game, or a guy who could get you 5 or 6 touchdowns, maybe become a big target in the red zone area. But now, these kids are becoming so athletic and the passing game has evolved in the NFL that if you look at some of the better offenses in the NFL, like the Chiefs with, Travis Kelce, or when you had the Patriots in their heyday with Rob Gronkowski, guys that can threaten the field, the middle of the field, and threaten the seam, which is basically, right between the hash mark and the numbers. If guys who can threaten that area have become very, very important. And offenses generally who have that type of player, that type of athlete making plays downfield in those areas are guys or offenses that put up a lot of points. So that's what I was looking for when I go into looking for my or rating my tight ends. I'm looking for guys that can contribute obviously mainly to the first and foremost to the passing game. And now the run blocking has kind of become secondary. It's not that it's not important, but a lot of these guys are coming out as full-blown, oversized receivers, if you will, from the college football, landscape, and they're coming to the NFL, ready to contribute as pass catchers. So now you have to work on their blocking and making, figuring out can they line up in line? Can they take on a 290-pound, 300 defensive lineman? Can he maintain their position at the line of scrimmage? A lot of these guys aren't doing that. So what are you doing? You got to be able to project them in terms of being playmakers at the next level, and then you got to see, all right, can they at least maintain a block at the line of scrimmage? Right. Can they at least not get my quarterback killed? Can they keep their body in between a defender and the ball carrier and allow the ball carrier to get an edge? Keep the defender from making a tackle. So so it's kind of changed over the years. Mm-hmm. So right now a lot of people have, from what I've gathered, have been knocking this current group of tight ends for this season, calling it not a very strong position group. But I kind of differ there because there are a lot of strong pass catching talent here, and there are some that could develop into all around tight ends. None of them will have the grades that I had listed for Noah Fant for last year, the kid from Iowa that it was my top rated tight end. I know his teammate Hawkinson went higher up. Right. Those are the only 2 first-round tight ends from last season. But none of these kids are going to have that high of a grade. However, each one of these kids brings something in terms of when you project them to the next level. Whether it's the height, with the speed, with the catch radius, the ability to make plays down the field, and some of them actually, if you coach them up, they have the physical tool set to develop into potentially all around tight end. So it's not, again, it's a mixed bag. It's a group that's going to get knocked, but there's also got some talented players in there, guys who can make plays at the next level. And again, now all we're looking for are playmakers, guys who can catch a 5-yard pass and maybe take it 10, 15 yards, or become a pass catching threat like a Travis Kelce, for example, mm-hmm. in the right system. So
sure,
there's a lot of projecting here that I'm doing. Yep. You're gonna hear the word move tight end a lot when I'm talking about these guys, and what that basically means is these are guys that are going to be lined up at multiple positions on the line of scrimmage, whether they're in the slot, whether they're outside the numbers, whether they're an offset as an H-back. Some will even line up as a fullback in the backfield. Depends on how they're lined up. But you'll hear the term move tight end a lot when I'm describing some of these kids coming up. But it's a talented group. Not a strong overall group like some of the guys we've seen over the coming years. There isn't the 1 or 2 top prospects, but I think there are kids here that are going to be able, when you kind of project them and see them develop the next level, you'll see some talent there.
Yeah, and we got a question already in the chat, Danny, from Tevin Jordan. Wants to know how important you think the tight end position is overall in an offense.
Oh yeah, we just kind of went over that a little bit. I mean, right now it's become really prevalent, especially in today's NFL. It's become if the teams, the offenses that have that type of weapon at that position are generally the offenses that you can see week in and week out putting up the points. Some of the easiest throws for quarterbacks and some of the easiest reads are throws in between the hash marks in the middle of the field. And if you have a tight end that can be able to give a quarterback a nice big target in the middle of the field, be able to, even if he's not, creating separation with his athletic ability, with his speed or whatnot, but he's a big target and he can extend away from his frame and give the quarterback a nice catch radius to throw to. A term I use a lot when I'm scouting these guys is, even if he's covered, he's open. Guys like that can catch through contact. That's become very important, especially when you're developing a lot of these young quarterbacks. So to me, this tight end position has really taken a really high role, if you will, in these NFL offenses. And look at our local team here, the Bears. We had high expectations for some of our tight ends. Unfortunately, injuries and just some lack of production has really kind of limited. Yeah. But lately they've given some younger guys an opportunity, and they've produced. And when they've produced, you've seen the rest of the guys' numbers kind of improve, because now you have a guy in the middle of the field taking some of that defensive attention that allow guys on the outside to make plays, guys in the backfield to make some plays. So it's a position that's really become prevalent, really become important, especially in today's NFL offenses.
Yeah, and let's get right into it, Danny. Finally, as we're 20 minutes into the show, number one on your list.
Cut me off, man. I'll go on and on and on. You gotta.
Oh no! It's. I think everything we've talked about has been poignant, and it's a perfect time to get to that number one on your list. Bryce Hopkins out of Purdue. On the season, 61 catches, 830 yards, 7 touchdowns, and he's averaging 13.6 yards per catch. What put Bryce Hopkins number one on your list, Danny?
Yeah, first of all, I love guys that have NFL bloodlines, and his dad is Brad Hopkins, the former Illini offensive lineman, who eventually ended up playing in the NFL. And I love bloodlines, and I love seeing a guy who, after only 1 year as a starter, was voted a team captain. Okay, that tells me he's got maturity and he's got some leadership in only 1 year as a starter. So typically you see guys at 2-3 year starters, get that type of recognition from their teammates. So right off the bat, off the field, he's got some pluses for me. Now, when you look at him, he's about 6'4", 240 pounds. He's got solid size. He's a long-legged move tight end, all right? He's a guy who's a smooth mover. He's an athlete, a guy who looks like a big, bulked-up wide receiver. He runs very sharp, clean routes for me. He's got a solid get-off at the snap. He can accelerate into his routes quickly. So he's got the explosiveness, the athletic ability to get off the line of scrimmage and into his routes. I like the way he stems and gets defenders to open up their hips to create separation, showing to me that he's got a knack for uncovering against tight coverage. His speed and athletic ability, we've already talked about, that creates mismatches and problems against the linebackers and defensive backs. He's got the ability to threaten that seam we just talked about. He's got the ability to attack both the flats and over the middle. His ability to catch the ball and quickly turn upfield. He won't dilly-dally around. He's not going to go lateral. He's not going to try and shake. He catches the ball and he uses that quickness, the explosiveness to go and hit it upfield and get as many yards as he can. His abilities, to me, can make average quarterbacks look good. So that's how much I'm high on Bryce Hopkins. Good hands catcher, just shows that he's a natural, pass catcher, can catch without breaking stride. He can adjust very well to the flight of the ball over his shoulders. Again, if you're making plays downfield, a lot of times you got to be able to adjust to that ball. It's not going to be a perfect throw every single time. He demonstrates terrific tracking and concentration instincts for me. In terms of blocker, he's a good effort blocker, and I have air quotes here when I say effort blocker. He's not a guy that can sit there and maintain his ground against those big, 290 to 300 pound defensive end, but he's a guy that he's functional. He can sustain his blocks. He's capable in terms of an inline blocker to kind of maintain position and like we talked about earlier, stay in between the defender and the quarterback, or the defender and the ball carrier. He's better blocking on the move. That's where he uses his athletic ability, his feet, his hips to be able to cut into the gaps and be able to seal off and block off defensive ends. He's aggressive reaching his second level run fits, meaning that he'll get off the line, get into a second level, find the linebacker or find the man in his zone and seal him off or block him off and give the running back possibly a lane to get through behind him. So those are the things that I look for. And again, is a guy that's got that big playability. Last year, 2018, he led Purdue, averaging 17.1 yards a catch, only making 4 starts. Okay, so this is a kid that whenever he's got the ball in his hands, he's got big play potential. So that's one of the things that I really caught my eye when I was scouting him, and something that I really like about Hopkins.
Yeah, number 2 on your list out of Vanderbilt is Jared Pinkney. 20 catches, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, 11.6 yards per catch. Now, when you hear these numbers, guys, don't let the numbers distract you. Danny will really give you the breakdown on the player as a whole, and there could be a reason why, their numbers aren't where you hear some of these other guys. So
Exactly.
what has Pinkney at number 2 on your list, Danny?
Well, just hitting on your point right there, Ryan, is the production. You see it's down. Last year, he had 50 receptions for 774 yards, averaging almost 16 yards a reception with 7 touchdowns. This year, you just read off his numbers. There's a lack of production, and I contribute that to the inconsistency play at quarterback. His quarterback last year, Kyle Shermer, is now the backup in KC. So he's gone on. He's moved on to the NFL. So some of the inconsistencies at quarterback, I believe, has led to some of this, the lack of production for Jared Pinkney. But if you take a look at his overall body of work, while at Vanderbilt, he's a 3-year starter. Another kid who's got solid size at 6'3", 255 pounds. So he's more of a wider body. He's been lined up again in multiple spots. I see him, set up in the offset. I see him lined up in a slot. I see him lined up outside the numbers. Possesses good functional build-up speed to threaten the seam. So this is a guy, he won't explode off the line of scrimmage, but he's a guy that once he gains momentum, he gets him moving, and you can see him building up speed and getting down the field. A guy that can extend outside his frame. Make those difficult grabs, catches cleanly. Not a guy that'll double catch or bobble the ball. Possesses, soft, big soft hands, catches on contact. This is a guy, the defenders direct on top of him will be able to concentrate and bring in that ball, can go up in the crowd and get those 50-50 jump balls. You're thinking about, red zone targets, so on and so forth. He brings a yak element, yards after the catch, to an offense. He's got a nice run strength after the catch. He can run through those feeble, tackle attempts. So he brings some of that element to you as well. And I like the way he beats zone coverage. He's what I call a zone beater. Does a nice job of finding those holes and just sitting in that zone and giving his quarterback an outlet, a target to get the ball to. So, there are areas of his game that need to be worked on. Like I said, he's not really elusive. He's not a make you miss kind of guy after the catch. He's more of a wide body tight end. Not necessarily a deep threat guy. But he's the guy that'll be functional within the intermediate routes of the offense. So anything within the middle, thing in the flat. So, and he's a, in terms of, like I said, hands catcher. He's, he's going to be developed into a weapon, in my opinion, when you project him to the next level.
Wow. Sounds is Danny? I didn't hear. Did you say his size? Did I miss that?
At 6'3", 255 pounds. So he's not as tall as some of the other ones, but he's a little bit wider, more bulkier at 255 pounds. So that's why for him, I think with better coaching, coach up his technique, maybe give him a little bit better core strength, he can be an inline blocker as well. So I think he's got a chance. There's a handful of guys on this list that could develop into what we call that all-around tight end. A guy that could be, inline blocker, can be lined up outside, so on and so forth. There's a number of guys here that are strictly going to be just move tight ends, guys that are going to be just lined up on the outside and are not going to be, you don't want them anywhere near the line of scrimmage. But Pinkney's got that chance. That's why he's kind of high up there for my rankings to develop into one of those, all-around tight ends. Is he that right now? His blocking isn't there, in my opinion, but that's something that you can coach up, something you can make him better.
Absolutely.
And again, we're not looking for guys that are going to be pancaking. That'd be great if you have a tight end that can pancake defenders. But right now, we're just looking for guys that can be threats in the offensive passing game, and then guys who can, like I said, maintain their position. Keep themselves in between the defender and the ball carrier or the quarterback. That's really what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah. And moving on to number 3 on your list, out of Dayton, Adam Troutman, 70 catches, 916 yards, 14 touchdowns on the season, averaging 13.1 yards per catch. Some impressive numbers there from Troutman, Danny. Number 3 on your list. What drew your eyes to Adam Troutman?
Yeah, this is the guy that I first heard of, believe it or not, when we had Jim Nagy on our show. And I was talking to Jim and I said, give me some guys that, as the draft process gets rolling here. As we get closer and closer to the All-Star game, so on and so forth, that not a lot of people have heard his name, that you think can be a pretty good, solid prospect. And Troutman was one of the first names he gave us. So I jotted it down. I went back, found some Dayton football tape, and lo and behold, man, I think this kid can be another one of those guys we're talking about all around potential. to be an all-around tight end. The first thing you catches your eye about this guy is size. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. And again, that's my estimate, so he might be a little bit bigger than that. Big, tall, receiving tight end. He's got a big frame, presents that huge target that we were talking about earlier. Carries his weight really well. Possesses good balance and body control for a kid that size. He's got enough speed when you couple it with his size to threaten the seam downfield. Now, what I mean by that is he understands how to use his frame and physicality to create subtle separation. This is not a guy that's going to blaze a 4.5, 4.6 40 for you at the combine, but he uses that size along with that length, to be able to make himself a weapon downfield. He's got athletic hands. He can catch off his frame. We're talking about those long arms and the size. That allows him to offer up a huge catch radius for those quarterbacks. In tight coverage, he has shown the ability to go up and make a catch over defenders. Demonstrating concentration skills and toughness. So again, not a guy that's going to use his athletic ability per se to create separation downfield, but he can use his size. He knows how to use his size, some of the physicality to be able to create subtle separation, be able to be a threat, be someone that go up and make a play on a football. In terms of toughness, this kid lowers his shoulder and will deliver a blow after the catch. He's not a guy that's shy away from contact at all. A high effort player as a blocker. So this is a guy that will extend his arms. He'll keep his legs churning and can effectively seal off the edge. And I've seen him pin down defensive ends. I think this is a kid, again, with added strength, could develop into a pretty good inline blocker. And the one thing I love about him, when it comes to his blocking, he'll block to the whistle. I love guys that will just continue blocking to the whistle, that'll finish their blocks. And I don't know, I forgot. I was jotting it down in his notes on how many pancake blocks I saw him make. Not necessarily just at the line of scrimmage, but getting to this next level. He'll latch onto a linebacker and he'll drive him into the ground. I love seeing that, and that shows me toughness. A competitive drive from a kid. Sure. But that size, he's not just relying on that size to be a player. He's trying to become an overall football player. And like I said, that's why he's got a chance. Again, Division II school, Dane is not going to come in and light the world on fire, I don't think, initially. Right. But he's a guy, you put him in your system, you develop him. He's got the traits, the physical traits to be able to become a weapon downfield, and you make him a tougher, more reliable blocker, and you got yourself a all-around tight end there.
So to stay on him, Danny, being that he's a Division II guy, now we've gone through that process here in Chicago as Bears fans with none other than Adam Shaheen, who now is on IR to end the season, and most likely I would assume is probably done in Chicago. They took a shot with him. He was referred to as Baby Gronk. Never panned out. Is Troutman somebody you see going in a second round spot?
That'll be hard for me right now. Without seeing him, run it, do his agility tests and go up against really, he's been invited to the Senior Bowl, and I believe he's accepted his invitation. So that's going to be a guy that I'm going to be focusing on during the week of practice. I want to see him go up against a step up in competition. I want to see how he does there. Does he shy away from some of these better athletes? Does he shine? Does he go up there and continue to make the same plays, especially some of those one-on-one drills we're going to see, in the end zone or in the red zone area, down the field, one-on-one against athletic linebackers, linebackers from the SEC, linebackers from some of these Power 5 conferences. Can they, guard him and protect them or keep him in check, if you will. So that's going to be important for him. I want to see where he runs at the 40. I'm not expecting him to blaze a high 4.4, 40, but I want to see some of the agility drills. I want to see his ability, athletically, how good of an athlete is he? Just going back to Shaheen real quick, athletically coming out, Shaheen measured pretty well. So, everything you looked at him, size, speed, some of his tape at the Ashland, I believe was the name of the school he went to. It's just, he dominated lower level competition, and that's what you want to see on these tapes for these guys. But just something which Shaheen hasn't clicked at the next level, whether it's injuries have put him back, the offensive system might be too complicated for him to comprehend. Who knows? But every case I deal I look at it differently. Just because Shaheen failed as a second-round pick doesn't mean necessarily Troutman will fail at the NFL level. Now,
right.
exactly. But now, will I put a high second-round grade on him? Right now, I don't. Right now, I see him more as a late day 3. Early day 3 pick. Sure. But again, I haven't finished my complete scouting process on Troutman. I've only seen like three games of his. I want to see some more. If I get my hands some more tape of his, I want to see that coupled with what he does at the combine, coupled what he does with at the Senior Bowl practices. Then you kind of get a better idea for the player, and you can kind of better project him at the next level.
Sure. Great answer, Danny. That's what I was looking for in that discussion. Number 4 on your list is Albert. Okay, I'm totally gonna butcher this. Okeke. I hope I don't know. That's what it looks like to me. Out of Missouri, 26 catches, 306 yards, 6 touchdowns, and he's averaging 11.8 yards per catch. Right. What draws your attention to him, Danny?
Well, I was hoping you'd take the last name because I know for sure I was going to butcher it. So I'm just going to call him Albert O. All right,
that works.
Actually, he's in our highlight package, and when we start.
Yes,
that's Albert O. That's the guy.
Yep.
So the one thing about this guy, he looks the part, dude. 6'4", 250 pound. He presents a big target. This guy dwarfs defensive backs. He possesses those long arms, that big frame you look for. We were just talking about. As a freshman, this guy tore up the SEC. He as a freshman, led the SEC in 11 receiving touchdowns. So he came in and really made an impression right away. Another guy that you can line up at the Y position, which is the inline blocking tight end position, or you can split them out wide. You can put them in a slot. You can put them out by the numbers. He uses his physicality to create separation. He's a guy that can post up in the red zone. So again, we're talking about a guy who's going to be a threat, potentially a threat in the one-on-one matchups in the red zone. Solid movement skills in terms of foot speed and agility for a guy that big. He's not going to be an explosive kid, but he's a guy that for that size moves pretty well down the field. He has soft hands. Demonstrated the ability to catch through contact and adjust to the throw, which is very critical. Back shoulder throws. Being able to if a ball's behind him, be able to kind of turn and extend away from his body and reel in the catch. So he's shown that ability. Does a nice job of looking the ball in nicely over his shoulder. So I seen him run a couple of wheel routes down the sideline. The ball was thrown out right in front of him. He ran underneath it, caught it real nicely. So it looks like a natural pass catching big man there for a tight end. Like I said, potential to be an effective inline blocker. He can hold his own at the line of scrimmage. So when you see him blocking, no one's bullying him around, no one's pushing him 5 yards back into the backfield. But as long as he extends his arms and he uses his core strength to be able to maintain as his leverage. So so he's got potential there. Another one of those guys we talked about, in the right coaching and technique wise, could develop into a nice all around tight end for you. Now, some of the things that has him number 4 on my list instead of number 1. I think he needs added play strength. It's got to get a little bit more stronger. Like I said, just to continue to develop as a blocker and be more prevalent at the point of contact. He's a looper off the line of scrimmage. He's not a guy that doesn't have a smooth release into his route. So that's something that probably can coach up. I'm guessing. Have a tight end coach kind of work on his release there at the line of scrimmage. Again, not an explosive athlete. He's not a guy that's he shows some hipness or hip tightness, I should say. He's not a guy that's going to pop out of his breaks. Not a guy who's going to make you juke or he's going to make a guy miss down the field. So there's limitations in his game. But again, we talked about a guy who's got the potential with the pass catching ability, the hands, the ability to adjust to the poorly thrown balls, and develop into in terms of his blocking, develop into an all around tight end. Again, no one here that I'm rating as high as I had Fant last year, but definitely a guy I could see. You take him in the 3rd round, a guy you can probably develop. A guy I really kind of looked at him and I had kind of flashbacks was, I don't know if you guys remember Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I believe he went in the 2nd round. I want to say Tampa took him in the 2nd round. I think he had more success with the Jets than he did with his first team. But a guy who developed into a nice, reliable tight end, nice, pass. Didn't have a great career, but he's a guy that developed, into a good pass catching tight end who also, give you something in terms of as a blocker. So that's something like where I see Albert O at, or developing into that. So that was my comp for him.
I like that comp. This is, the more we talk about these prospects, Danny, the more such a trap shoot with some of these guys, especially in a position like this where, there isn't a guy that jumps off the paper. They're all, and maybe not all similar, but there's a few that are similar. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's interesting to see at a position like this how closely compared some of these guys are to one another.
Right, and it's there isn't a guy that it's head over heels above anybody else. It's just what you're looking for. You're looking for traits that you can project to the next level. Traits that the offensive line coordinators and coaches can say, all right, I can take this skill set and I can make him be successful at doing A. Or I could take him and he can do A for me, but I can coach him up and I can make him do A, B, and C as well. So it's how these coaches see these guys, what they think they can get out of them. Again, a lot of this is going to be all that background stuff and talking to their current coaches, their strength coaches, and see how these guys are. Are they motivated in the when they're lifting weights? Are they motivated in the rooms, meeting rooms? Are they wanting to learn? All this stuff, it all plays into it. Right now, what I'm looking at tape, I'm looking at traits, and I'm projecting. There's other stuff that's going to be coming into prominence here when these coaches get with these players and the scouts do their background check and kind of put a full package together. So there is no perfect tight end here, but there are guys that give you certain traits that appeal to a lot of NFL teams currently.
Sure. And number 5 on your list out of Florida Atlantic is Harrison Bryant. 65 catches, 1,004 yards, 7 touchdowns, and a 15.4 yards per catch. What put him at number 5 on your list, Danny?
Yeah, actually, he was just named the 2019 Mackey Award winner, which goes to the top-rated, college tight end. So he was, he got that award. I think it was, I think it was yesterday or today. I think it was named that. But again, 6'4", 235 pounds, another tall, move tight end who's got a narrow frame, slender build, looking more like a wide receiver, a bulked up wide receiver, a fluid mover, a guy who can get to his top speed quickly. Good release quickness off the line of scrimmage. This guy sinks his hips and he accelerates at the top of his routes to create some of that separation. He has a feel for coverage. This is a guy that does a nice job of finding those soft spots in those zones and making himself available for his quarterback. Creates mismatches in the slot with his length and his speed, especially when you're matching him up versus linebackers in man coverage. Tracks the ball nicely over his shoulders, like we talked about with Albert O. And that guy, if you're going to be a downfield threat, you're going to be able to make those downfield over-the-shoulder catches. Catches the ball in stride. And I'm not a guy that has to stop or anything to be able to catch a ball. He's got terrific, reliable hands. He can extend away and pluck the ball out of the air. He's competitive, a runner after the catch, utilizing his foot speed to out-angle and outrun defenders. He's tough and competitive. This is a guy that will pop pads as a lead blocker, escorting running backs through the hole. So he's not going to shy away from contact. And he's a willing, trying blocker. So he's a guy that will give effort. There are some guys that they know, they want nothing to do with blocking. They're just going to go out there and just put their hands on a guy, and then if they get pushed out of the way, they get pushed out of the way. Bryant, what he does is, he'll just give you effort. He might not stand, he might not be able to, maintain his ground, but at least he'll give you effort. And he's, I've seen a couple times where he was pushed off and he just got back up and came back at the defender again. You want to see that. The guy knows he can't physically stand up to this guy, to his opponent, but you know what? He's not just going to go down like that. He's going to get up and he's going to fight. He's going to continue to try, like we talked about earlier, get in between the defender and the ball carrier or the quarterback. So that's competitive toughness for me, and I like seeing that.
Yeah, you can't. That's something you can't teach. If you've got a guy that does that on his own, he doesn't need to be told.
Exactly.
Number 6 on your list, out of Notre Dame, Cole Kmet.
Yeah.
41 catches, 482 yards, 6 TDs, averaging 11.8 yards per catch.
He's a kid that really surprised me. When I watched Notre Dame, to be honest with you, he's never really stuck out to me on a handful of games I've watched. However, I took a look at his tape and I ran into it, and Again, another guy that looks the part, 6'5", 250 pounds, very good size for a tight end. What surprises me is that this kid fires out of his stance and gets into his routes really quick. He carries his weight nicely. This is another kid that can sink his hips and turn quickly at the top of his route versus linebackers, creating that little bit of a separation window. Solid hands and hand-eye coordination. The guy possesses long arms, so he's got that reach. Another one who provides that big target, for a quarterback down the middle of the field. He's a functional run after the catch kid. He's a guy that's tough to tackle. I've seen tape where he got the ball and it took like 2 or 3 guys just to get him down to the ground. So, he's got that yard after contact ability. And at the second level, run fits are, he's pretty aggressive there. He quickly identifies and he reaches his target. So we're talking about linebackers or guys at the second level of the defense. So he fires out of his stance, identifies his second level run fit, gets to him and seals him off. So, stuff like that, kind of catches your eye when you watch Cole Kmet. 1-year starter, so a little bit of an experience there. Okay. This is a kid that gets pushed around a lot, to my surprise, at the line of scrimmage. He has trouble sustaining his blocks, gets thrown off on the ground a lot. So he's got to get that core strength. He's got to be able to get that technique, coached up or add some added strength. But again, he's a guy I think that can provide you, a viable threat, a guy who is potentially, with the added strength which you talked about, being able to improve his pass blocking technique, develop into a all around tight end. But his size, his hand-eye coordination, like we talked about, his hands, and the way he fires out of his stance, some of that athleticism, and then that yards after the catch, being able to break through tackles and take needing 2 or 3 defenders to bring him down, stuff like that caught my eye, and that's why I added him on this list.
Sure. Now you said 1-year starter, so is he a senior?
He's a junior.
He's a junior, okay.
Yep.
And it's okay. So he's only a junior. So now, is he someone you could see maybe not coming out and staying back for that?
He's a guy.
Year? Okay.
Yeah, he's a guy definitely I could see possibly sticking around for another year, just to get more experience, develop his game, and eventually become maybe improve some of the areas I was just hitting on right now, and becoming a higher rated prospect next season.
Yeah, number 7 on your list, Josiah De Guerra out of Cincinnati, 36 catches, 492 yards, 7 touchdowns, averaging 13.7 yards per catch. What stood out to you about Josiah, Danny?
Yeah, there are a couple of tight ends on this list that are just strictly just move tight ends. They're the guys that you don't necessarily want them around the line of scrimmage in terms of blocking. These guys are just going to be weapons in the passing game. And Josiah is a kid. When I put on his tape. Actually, I was watching his teammate, Michael Warren, the running back, and Josiah caught my eye. I looked at this kid. I'm like, what is it? Size-wise, he's about 6'2", 238 pounds. So he's one of those, smaller-sized tight ends, if you will. But he's an athletic kid. This is a guy that, he's an easy mover with those oily hips I've talked about in the past, guys who can easily change directions. He displays quickness, agility, balance, and body control. He's got an easy get off at the line of scrimmage, and he gets into his routes quickly. He's stressing those defenders right away as soon as the ball is snapped. Natural hands catcher, catches in stride, and adjusts very well to the flight of the football. This is the guy that has got that speed, again, to threaten not only the seam, but he can also threaten every level of the defense. All right, he's good at setting up defensive backs and creating separation out of his breaks. So he's not a guy that's going to be some of the other guys we talked about using their physicality, using their body to be able to, make plays. He's a guy that actually can create separation with his athletic ability, his speed, and his quickness. He can make the first tackle or miss, so he's got some elusiveness in the open field. He's a highly competitive kid. This is one where I was watching a tape and I forgot who they were playing, but the quarterback basically Cincinnati was in the red zone. The quarterback threw an interception. The corner who picked the ball off had nothing but green grass in front of him, and he's racing down the line. And here comes Josiah from the opposite side of the field, sprints all the way down about 50 or 60 yards down the field, and tackles this kid. Came out of nowhere. So that's kind of stuff that I catch and I jot down because, again, we're talking about football character, talking about competitive toughness. You put that with his ability as a pass catcher, his athletic ability, his ability to use his speed and quickness to create separation and elusive in the open field. this is where I'm talking about. You take these kids, see what they do well, and you project them to the next level. And I can see a coach or offensive coordinator saying, "Hey, give me this kid's competitiveness, give me his athletic ability. Yeah, I know he's only 6'2", about barely 240 pounds, but you know what? I'll get the ball in his hands in space, and I'll make sure he's effective for us on offense."
Yeah, without question. I mean, hearing that, that's somebody you want on your roster, somebody that's never going to give up. And that's awesome to hear about Josiah. Number 8 on your list, Kolby Parkinson out of Stanford, 48 catches, 589 yards, 1 touchdown, and 12.3 yards per catch. What do you like about Parkinson, Danny?
Yeah, this is another kid that his production kind of dipped this year. His catches and his yards are up, but his overall yard average per catch and his touchdowns are down. Okay. That might have been, I know the senior quarterback there got hurt, and for some reason, Costello, KJ Costello got hurt a little bit, so I don't know if that was it. But he caught my eye, Parkinson did last year when I was scouting his teammate, Caden Smith, who's, by the way, on the Giants now. So the one thing you like about this kid is, man, he's 6'6", 250 pounds. He has almost a 6'10" wingspan. So you talk about a guy with a huge catch radius. This is Kolby Parkinson gives that to you. He's played in a pro-style system, which for me is big. A guy who's already is familiar with pro concepts, has been coached up to some of these pro techniques. That to me is a nice plus to have. He's a crisp route runner, believe it or not, for a guy that big. Uses head fakes, jabs, and gear changes to set up defenders nicely. He's got good body control and length, we just talked about. Adjusts well to the ball in the air. He makes difficult contested grabs. His ability to extend away from his frame, and make a catch. He's one of those guys where even if he's covered, he's open because of that wingspan, because of the ability to extend away and go up and get the ball. He's effective, settling into zones. Does a nice job of sitting nicely and then squaring his shoulders to the quarterback, giving him a nice target to aim at. And he's willing to work across the middle of the field and catch on contact. A lot of times he'll go across the field, take a hit, bounce back up again. You like seeing that in a guy that doesn't have any fear of going across the middle and basically taking on linebackers and safeties, or looking at basically take your knee out or knock you out of the game or whatnot. So I like that kind of stuff about him. 2-year starter, all Pac-12. Second team last year, holds the school record for most touchdowns in the game. I believe it was 4 versus Oregon State last season. So,
wow.
In terms of things that have him ranked number 8 on my list, he's not consistently a finisher as a blocker. He's a guy that allows some of his second level blocks, his linebackers, to slip off and make the play. Limited body power. He's got a skinny lower half. So definitely a guy that doesn't offer much in terms of yards after contact, in terms of breaking tackles and getting upfield after he's made the catch. So there's some areas where he obviously got to add strength and improve in some areas like that. But definitely a guy with that size, that wingspan, his ability to extend away into good, nice soft hands, play in a pro style system. Those are all the pluses that has him 8th overall on my list here.
Kolby Parkinson out of Stanford. Number 9 on your list is Hunter Bryant out of Washington. 52 catches, 825 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 15.9 yards per catch. What do you like about Bryant, Danny?
It was very hard for me to list this guy as a tight end because I look at him as a receiver. I mean, look at his size. He's 6'1", 200. He's listed as 6'2.5", but there's no way he's 6'2.5". He's about 6'1", 230, 235 pounds. To me, he looks like a receiver. So anyway, but he's an undersized move tight end. He's another guy just like Josiah De Guerra that's going to be strictly a move tight end for me. Athletic and quick. He can stress linebackers in coverage and create separation. Very good movement skills for a tight end. Fires off the line, is quick into his routes. Body control and ability to adjust to those back shoulder throws. He was pretty on tape. He's pretty good with those back shoulder throws. You can contour his body. The quarterback just got to lay it out there for him and put it within his area, and he's going to make the catch. Tough kid, man. This is a guy that works across the middle. He's a guy with another guy just like Parkinson we were talking about earlier. Take a hit, we'll get back up and come back, for another rep. So another guy that I love the way he sifts through zones. A lot of times when you look at these college players and their zone coverage, they'll sit to their area, and then lo and behold, the quarterback's got to roll out to the opposite side. You look at the receiver or the tight end or whatever, they're stuck there in their same area. Well, with Bryant, he understands that he's got to work towards his quarterback. So you'll see him if quarterback is flushed out to the opposite side of the field. You see Bryant working through that area, trying to get himself, make himself available for his quarterback to be a nice release valve. So I like that kind of his ability to process the game, to be able to go ahead and start thinking, all right, my quarterback's in trouble. Let me start running here and make myself a viable option for him to get rid of the ball. So that kind of stuff I like seeing. His production, man. This kid has 85 receptions for almost 1,400 yards, and is fourth and second most, respectively, in school history for receptions and for yards.
Wow!
But and think about this though. One of the concerns I have about him is durability. So he missed 4 games in 2017 due to injury. He missed 9 games in last season due to an injury. This was his first full season that he's played, and he still put up that type of production. So, durability concern is going to be something that he needs to, kind of battle off when he gets into the NFL. However, when he's on the field, he's productive. And, he plays in a Power 5 conference. Like I said, he's athletic. He's not a guy I'm going to line up in line. So don't expect him at the line of scrimmage trying to block anybody.
Not a blocker.
No, he's not a blocker. He's not a blocker.
Yeah.
He's a pass catching threat. That's what he is. Like I said, I had a hard time putting him in as a tight end, because to me he's more like a bulked up receiver. But that's where he's going to be ranked when he comes into the NFL. But yeah, he's just strictly a playmaker in the passing game.
And then last but not least on your top 10 list out of Arkansas, Shaheen, or as we know him, CJ OGrady, 33 catches, 372 yards, 3 touchdowns, 11.3 yards per carry. What added him at that 10 spot on your list, Danny? Yeah,
this is a kid that really has, every time I watched Arkansas, he's caught my eye, and he's always made plays downfield. Highly recruited 4-star athlete out of high school. I think he led the team last year in both receptions and touchdowns. So he's productive. He's got average size, for a tight end, about 6'3", 250 pounds. But he's got a wide body. And sometimes, it looks a little unathletic, but you know what? When he gets him moving, he gets downfield pretty quick. He possesses, big, soft hands, adjusts very well to the ball, outstanding hand placement and catch radius. This is a kid that I've seen extend and lay out, parallel to the ground, kind of like a receiver, and catch balls that are thrown away from him. So that type of catching ability in a tight end, when you see that, you note that right away. He shows very good coverage recognition, does a nice job of feeling his way through zones and finding those open areas and sitting. And he uses his wide body effectively to block out and shield away defenders from the football. So if you're going to come and try and knock the ball, you got to go all the way around him. So and he's strong. This kid is strong with the ball in his hands, man. He is tough to bring down. You see guys bouncing off of him, with that big body, flashing some of that power running after the catch. He'll drop his shoulder, barrel through contact, having defenders bounce off him again. That contact balance that we talked about with running backs a lot of times, where they can take on contact and keep their balance and continue plowing through down the field. OGrady shows that. But there are some concerns with him. There are some off-the-field concerns with him. In 2015, he was arrested for suspicion of driving while influenced and possession of alcohol as a minor. And he was, towards the end of this season, he was suspended from the team, and he's actually left the team. So there are some red flags in terms of off-the-field stuff that teams will need to delve into and see what's going on there. But when you get him on the field, and again, he played in the SEC, which to me is one of the better conferences in all of college football. And he was productive, and there isn't a lot of weapons around him. So he was a lot of times he was the main guy, the main guy in the passing offense. And against teams like Alabama and Missouri and other teams, they couldn't contain him. So that type of when that type of talent flashes on tape and you see it against top competition, when there's not really much around him, you can kind of see that this kid's got something there, some talent. That off the field stuff got to be looked into, but just base it off his tape. We're projecting into the next level. I see him having a game that works nicely at the NFL stage.
Nice. So rounding out the top 10, that was CJ OGrady out of Arkansas. And Danny, a great top 10 right there with tight ends. And before we sign off tonight, Danny, we haven't had the chance to talk about the Tua Tagovailoa injury and, just seeing it happen. You immediately see it and you automatically think Bo Jackson, how it ended his career and so on and so forth. And, seeing it happen to Tua, the kid was probably going to be a first-round pick, guaranteed a first-round pick. What do you think this does now, Danny, to his draft stock? I've read the reports, thank ESPN, for an article that they put out today. Doctors are saying that he'll make a full recovery.
Right.
It's a right hip dislocation and a posterior wall fracture. So obviously the hip joint is composed of the ball portion, which is the round head of the femur or thigh bone, and the socket portion, which is the deep saucer-shaped. I'm not even trying to say that word.
I'll say, you're painting a nice picture for me here.
Yeah, so the joint basically is inherently stable and requires a great deal of force to disrupt. Well, he fell hard on his knee, and then two players landed on top of him, right. And that's really what caused this injury. Now, they're saying he'll make a full recovery. Obviously, I don't think he's going to be participating in anything. Now, they're saying maybe around April he could start working on like football related activities. What does this do to his draft stock, Danny?
Well, obviously I think it knocks him out of the top 10.
Okay.
Prior to this, I think he was a sure lock fire top 10. Whether he's 1, 2, 3, 4, that was yet to be determined. I think what this does is it knocks him out of the top 10. It possibly knocks him out of the first round. Again, so much is going to depend on that medical at the combine. What kind of reports the NFL teams, medical staffs get on him. Obviously you mentioned it when it first happened. Everyone's comparing it to the Bo Jackson injury that ended his career. But reading this article and reading some other things on this, it's not comparable to the Bo Jackson injury. So it's not something that's going to really. We can't use the Bo Jackson injury as an example of what could happen to him. Another thing is he plays a different position than Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson was a running back. He'd do a lot of cutting, a lot of stopping, a lot of adjusting on that hip. So, he plays a position where quarterback where you could be, while he wasn't, he can be always elusive, but he wasn't like, a Lamar Jackson kind of a type of running back where he needed his legs to really carry out his assignments. So, if that medical report comes back and says, he's got a clean bill of health. He won't be available for OTAs. He might be available for training camp or whatnot. I definitely see him, probably taking a year off, the initial year, maybe being on a PUP list or injury reserve, and just give him a whole full season just to recover. But if that medical report comes back clean, I think he goes in the first round. I think he goes to a team lower in the first round, maybe like in a 20 to 32 range. I think a team that's got an established quarterback, think i.e. the Chargers with Phillip Rivers, another team that's looking for maybe the Saints with like a Drew Brees, a guy that can kind of bring in, have him sit a year and groom him. It's going to be hard for me to see a team using a top 10 pick on him, even though his talent probably might merit that. But just because I just don't know. There's so many unknowns. We don't know how the medical report's going to come back. We don't know when he'll be available. Will he have to sit out a full year? And if those things aren't answered, a team's going to be hard pressed to pass on another talented player to take a kid that is going to be probably setting out a year. So I think this might be a blessing in disguise for him, because instead of being put into a situation where you got to go in and, like, say Miami, for example, with a team that doesn't have much talent around you, and pressed into it and play early, you might be able to sit out a year behind a veteran and kind of be eased, have him eased into a situation where he's a starting quarterback in a year from now. So it sucks for the kid because obviously he's lost money, but it could be, in the long run, it could be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and I was listening. I can't remember where I was listening today. Maybe it was Golic and Wingo. I don't remember, but they mentioned how, he hasn't ruled out coming back for his senior season, which, I would be shocked if he did,
too, yeah.
but
unless that medical report comes back and says, hey, they don't give him the all clearance, which from everything we've read, we've seen, the doctor that did this, the surgery says he's expect a 100%, full clearance, full recovery, whatnot. So unless something different comes out about him in terms of that injury, I'd be shocked if he doesn't go in the first round. And I'll be shocked if he goes back to Alabama, because if you think about it, what are you going to go back to Alabama for? You're probably not going to be able to, play again, or even if you play again, you're going to probably miss some time, and then you're going to risk yourself again to possibly getting hurt again, and then now you're going to really kill your stock if you come back and you get hurt again. So, if you have a chance to go in the first round, go get your contract. Yeah, you're going to lose some money, but at least you have that 5-year, first round money. And you can,
absolutely.
And then you can go and you can work for a profession. Your profession now is as a football player. You can train year round, and you can you don't have to worry about class and all that stuff. You can just go there and get healthy, get right, and then in a year from now, probably contend for a starting position with that team.
Yeah, and let's hope for the best for Tua. I think he's a great player. I was hoping the Bears would have a chance at him, Danny, but it doesn't look that way.
That was my main concerns when we broke down to when we did the quarterback. So was his ability to stay healthy, and again, obviously no one predicts these kind of injuries, but prior to this, it was mainly like an ankle, a knee. There was always something that was bothering him, and again, his body size is about 6'1". I assume his height about 6'1", 200 some pounds. So I know that's been the rage lately. Teams are kind of like saying, all right, screw the height weight regimen that we've always kind of set for our quarterbacks, and with guys like Baker Mayfield and so on and so forth. But if you look at Mayfield, you look at some of the other quarterbacks that are attacking, they're not doing so well. So for me, it's got to be a guy. It's got to be at least 6'1.5" to 6'2". At least 6'2". That's my range there, in higher or taller, I should say, and 200 plus pounds. Be able to take those hits though, and be able to take that punishment behind that, in the NFL at the NFL level. So Tua was always, foot quickness, his ability in the pocket to sense pressure, his downfield accuracy, his ability to throw on the run, all was there for him on tape, and all was like top notch. But I saw some questions about his arm strength in terms of making those tight window throws and durability. Those are my two main things with Tua. And unfortunately, that this injury really came at a bad time for him.
I know, yeah, totally did. But keeping with quarterback news, Danny, Utah State quarterback Jordan Love has declared for the NFL draft. Love on the season, in his 31 starts through 3 seasons, has thrown for 8,283 yards, 57 touchdowns, and 28 interceptions. No surprise here, right, Danny, that he's declared?
Yeah, he's a guy that opened up this season on my top 10 list. I believe it was number 5, if I'm not mistaken. Skill set wise, tool wise, he's got everything. He's got a quick release. He's got a strong arm. He's got to be about 6'3", 6'4". He's athletic. He can run the RPOs. He can use his feet to escape from pressure. He's got decent pocket presence. But the thing about him is consistencies this year. With his decision making. He would make a terrific throw, and then he'd throw one into triple coverage. So there was rumors that he was thinking about being a graduate transfer, possibly going to Oklahoma or Texas Tech, or a couple of schools that were rumored that he was thinking about transferring to. I would love to see him go to Oklahoma and see what Lincoln Riley would do with him with that type of skill set at quarterback. Sure. But apparently he's been given a pretty good grade, I would assume, because he went up skipping his senior year and now going into the draft. And this is a kid that I said at the beginning of the season, he's got the skill set to be a first round pick. Unfortunately, his season was, like we said earlier, his season was a little inconsistent. His decision making was really what came under the microscope for me. Again, some of that could be he lost a lot of his top talent in terms of his receivers and tight ends. So that could be some of that. But he's a kid that skill set wise, he's got NFL starting caliber material. So he's a guy that if you're a Bears fan, you're thinking second round. If he drops that low, Possibly could be if they're going quarterback or thinking quarterback. That's a guy that could drop there for them. But like I said, athletically, got a quick release, strong arm, can do can use his feet to escape pressure and all that stuff. So definitely a talented kid. That's something I was really high on beginning of the season. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, I was a little bit surprised he came out because of the season he had. And I thought that idea of playing for Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma was kind of appealing. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, he was actually on your midseason list, Danny, number 8 on that list.
Yeah, I think he opened up at number 5, my preseason list,
yes.
And he dropped down to number 8.
Yep. So lastly, Danny, before we call it a night, just wanted to get your early thoughts on the college football playoff as number 1 LSU will face number 4 Oklahoma and number 2 Ohio State will face off with number 3 Clemson. How do you see these games playing out right at this point, Danny?
Well, if you're asking me who I think is going to win, I think we're looking at an LSU Ohio State LSU Clemson matchup for the championship. Clemson has been probably one of the hottest teams to finish up the season. I think I don't know if they were just bored coming into the season. It's like we're playing the ACC. We got these guys. We can give half-ass efforts and we'll just beat them by 30 and 20 points. So. But as I think Dabo Swinney started really kicking their butts, and towards the tail end of the season you saw them come alive there. Every aspect from offense to defense, even special teams was playing well there. So I think they go into this playoff at a hot pace. Ohio State is no slouch. Ohio State's got a ton of NFL prospects on it. As a matter of fact, if you want to get a good preview of probably the first round of this year's draft, you watch that Ohio State Clemson game, you're going to see a lot of guys that are going to be going in that first round. But Ohio State really, defensively, Chase Young is one of the better players in college football. Obviously, they got some other players, some defensive backs there that I like a lot as well. And that quarterback, Justin Fields has really opened up my eyes. I think he's got a potential to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the upcoming. I think he's only a sophomore, so possibly next year's draft. So he's a guy that I think has shown with his ability not only to run with use his feet to run with the football, but also throw the ball. I think he's really opened up some eyes. I know he opened up my eyes for sure. But I think Clemson gets that game, and obviously I think LSU would beat Oklahoma, and I think that's going to be one hell of a championship game between Clemson and LSU.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm leaning the same way for sure, Danny. Excited to see how those games play out. And all the other bowl games that are going to be coming up here over the course of the rest of this month and into January. So a great show with Danny's look at his updated tight end list. We want to thank everyone who listened and live and joined us in the Mixler chat. And we also hope you enjoyed this week's show. If you can't join us live, you can find the podcast version of Draft on Tap shortly after the live show on all your favorite podcast streams. Thank you to everyone at Bears Barroom who continues to make the network as spectacular as is. Join us next week for another episode of Draft on Tap, and good night, everybody.